Hi and welcome to this episode of the Observation Deck. At the moment, I'm sure you can appreciate I am very busy with a few projects and none more so at this moment than the masterclass, which is why unfortunately episodes have to be uploaded when I get the time and I might miss my normal Friday night slot. Anyway, in this episode I want to discuss what many of you will now be dealing with if you followed Defusing the Debt Bomb. You should have by this time of the year, because it came out in January I believe, at the stage where you're making the claim. So we'll now be dealing with some of the initial pitfalls of you making a claim or counterclaim against those who trespass against you. And over the next few weeks, I'll be starting to cover the most obvious final step in the whole process of dealing with debts, which of course is the claim itself against the debt collectors. But in this episode, I want to discuss, or more to the point, give you the heads up on what you may encounter at the start of your claim part of that overall journey. I cannot emphasize enough the importance of this stage, but as we go through this episode, I'm sure you will understand why we get so much flack from the system for what we are trying to do. And if you thought debt agents were underhanded, let's take a look at what the games the judiciary tend to play. I'll see you on the other side. Welcome to this episode of the Observation Deck, and before I get started I just need to make a quick apology because, as some of you know, I had a short break recently and left my out of office on thinking I would be super efficient. Unfortunately, the very first day of my break, my internet host decided to place a stop on both my website and my email server until I clicked a stupid button to verify my ID. Needless to say, those of you who attempted to get hold of me over that short break period were met with a bounce back email. Anyway, it is all sorted now, so my apologies if that affected you in any way, or if you tried to contact me and could not, you can now using the normal emails. Secondly, I want to thank all of you who signed up for my masterclass Debt Remedy, and let those of you who may be thinking about it, well, don't take my word for it. Get some feedback from those who have attended the masterclass already, see what they have to say, and hopefully some of you who've been in the masterclass who are watching this video, you might want to just drop something in the comments. I'm not encouraging you either way. I just want you to drop whatever you felt gave the masterclass and content value for money. Obviously don't give them all the content away, folks, but decide for yourselves. There are a few more dates still available, and I will increase those dates if the numbers reflect that. So that's enough about that, and my apologies on the email. So let's jump now to the hurdles which may be placed in front of you should you attempt to claim against agents of the system, better known as debt collectors. I think it will serve us all well having a little background and overview of why we get so much rubbish each and every step of the way from what shouldn't really be an opposing force. That's the judiciary, that is. But much of it is obvious. But for this episode, I will stick to the specific challenges you may face when first you start dealing with the junior judiciary, like the clerk of the courts, when it comes to serving and filing your documents. Oh, and a shout out to DD for highlighting this matter and prompting me to find at least a temporary solution. This is part of what you can see now on the screen, was sent to me with obviously DD's personal details removed. But as you can see on the screen, some of the conditions given to him were, to say the least, a little suspect in reasoning, but I will come to that in a moment. What we should overstand is the ability and the will of the system's minions to attempt to block our efforts to find justice. And let's be honest, this should come as no surprise since it seeks to allow the flow of debt and council tax summonses through illegitimate channels, yet at the same time it makes it difficult or completely blocks Joe Public from accessing due process. And for those of you who do not know how to deal with them in these judicial systems, are denied justice because of these blocks. One such example I am now going to highlight and discuss with you. I mean, let's be honest, the most common first step of the system, and again highlighted in the email sent to me by DD, is the courts will or may lose your paperwork. Yes, an obvious one, but one which is used very often, and it's not until you pressure them, the court that is, by phone or notices or face-to-face, they miraculously locate your documents, and in DD's case, only to lose them again a week later, and so on. Now, I'm not saying this happens all the time, but it seems to happen to, how should I put it, non-commercial or private claims more often than has been reported by others. And I personally find it incredulous here in the United Kingdom that the Northampton Council Tax Summons machine, printing out thousands of tax claims in unlawful administrative courts, well, those summonses never seem to go astray. But of course, some of our private claims against corrupt systems seem to disappear for weeks at an end, only to pop up later and get lost again. And as far as that's concerned, I'll leave you to make up your own minds about that. But moving on to the next excuse, obviously losing your documents is one, but the next excuse for not allowing a claim to go through is DD's current situation, which I'm currently looking into in order to write up a workaround, but I've already given DD some information on it, which I'm going to share with you. What you're seeing now is a screenshot from the latest reply email that I got from DD and his local courthouse. And to be honest with you, as you can see on the screen there, to say it was questionable is being overly generous. And as you can see, there are reasons given for not allowing him to pursue his claim in the correct manner, and is given in that reply. Now, in screenshot that you can see now, again this screenshot states that the documents have now been sent back, and unless he can locate the recipient's private home address, as far as they're concerned, there is no case. Now, this, folks, is how blatant the minions of the system will be in stopping any and all of us in seeking lawful remedy. But, as with any subterfuge by the minions of attempted mayhem, they always have a major weakness. And in my opinion, that weakness itself, as with the whole of the system, is arrogance. Arrogance, or, I don't know, overconfidence. It is the arrogance to think we will simply sit back and walk silently into the night to be treated as they wish, when they wish. It is this overconfidence in the festering system of what passes for justice, and the fact that they believe we can't read our own rules. Or, more to the point, would not know where to start in counteracting such blatant disregard of due process within the judicial system. Now you've seen the clerk of the court's excuse for not allowing DD's N1 claim to go through, and thus his case to continue, let me take you to what I sent back to DD as a fact of law. Let me just follow this link. And as you can see here, so this is practice direction. This is on the Justice website, the Ministry of Justice. And as you saw in DD's email, the clerk of the court made it absolutely crystal clear that unless that he had the home address of that person named on the M1 claim form, there was no case. So here we go. And this is part and parcel of what I sent back to DD anyway. But Part 6, Service of Documents, Ministry of Justice. And you see I've got two highlighted here from before where I was talking to DD. And this method of service gets us to this. Method of service, Practice Direction 6.3. And I'll leave the links in the description below. But a claim form may be served by any of the following methods. First class, but I'm leaving it in a specified place, etc, etc, etc. A company may be served. Now obviously we're talking about an individual within the company, so certain important points here. Practice direction 6.6. The claim form must be served within the jurisdiction except where blah 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 rules apply. The claimant must include in the claim form an address at which the defendant may be served. It does not say home address. It only stipulates that address must include a full postcode unless the court orders otherwise. And yes, it's obviously got a full postcode. There's no reference to having actually needing a home address as per the clerk of the court, which is why they've completely rejected DD's case at this stage. But let's carry on, because this was the major thing. They threw it back at the guy because he hasn't got the home address. But let's just carry on. Service on a solicitor or within the United Kingdom. So we're in the or within the United Kingdom. But after you go, I'm not going to go through all of this. It's only pertaining to this excuse that they've just given DD. But a solicitor acting for the defendant has notified the claimant in writing that the solicitor is instructed by the defendant to accept service of the claim on behalf of the defendant at a business address within the jurisdiction. So clearly you can actually serve it at a business address. The claim form must be served at the business address of that solicitor. Doesn't matter whether it's a solicitor or a bank, it's still a business address. And it actually goes on to say, so the most damning indictment against this particular email sent back 6.23, which, without going into all this detail, let's get to the crux of the matter. It says the business address within the United Kingdom, this is about service for proceedings, kingdom are for the party to be served, or it could be omitted. But where there is no solicitor acting for the party, in other words, we, for the most part, are going to be acting for ourselves, an address within the United Kingdom at which the party resides or carries on business. You cannot get clearer than that. While it is preferable to locate the residential address, it is not the only way to have documents served. But unfortunately, in DD's case, the clerk has declined and lied by omission and rejected his claim. Yes, a bold statement, but you can see it for yourself. If I just flip back to what is said in the email, as you can see there, it quite clearly states you must have their home address, but the clerk deliberately misses out, well, actually, you can use a works address as well. So they've rejected his claim. This case is ongoing, and I will be digging into the specifics of the whole process of making your claim. And with cases like this popping up during this vital part of the process, it is imperative we anticipate the moves the opposition is going to make. And yes, I know it's a bit of a bummer when you figure out that the opposition, not being the debt agencies, they're just one of them, is also the judiciary itself, which obviously most of us knew in the first place. But it is sad to note, normally the defendant is our natural opposition, and yet here we are fighting the very system in order to get justice. If nothing else, it highlights the challenges we all face in the presence of such adversaries and the need to stand our ground. I suggested to DD he places all the contrary evidence of the clerk's reasons for case file rejection in the form of questions contained within an affidavit. This way the clerk can be dealt with later, and I suspect he will quickly see the error of his ways once a formal complaint is sent into the appropriate governing body within his judicial swampland. This includes an informal telephone conversation with the clerk, as I suggested to DD, for advice on how to place the correct paperwork in based on the rejections stated previously. This, of course, the call that is, has been recorded at the time of the call, and if any incriminating comments are made, they can be transcribed to an affidavit for later use. Of course, he's not going to mention the actual laws which counters the excuse the clerk gave for rejection until the end of the informal conversation. That way, the clerk can bury himself nice and deep first, and then almost as an afterthought, then I would hope that DD and yourselves, if you ever find yourselves in a position, can ask about the laws which state the opposite. And you can quote those laws, and I'm going to obviously leave those links in the description below for you. But that should make for an interesting conversation and transcript forming part of your affidavit. But it seems obvious the corporate industrial complex, which effectively runs the revenue generating stealth tax laws appearing as laws in the judicial system. This is complemented and supported by the judiciary, which has been created over many centuries to enforce the will of courtocracy in all its forms, and governments to royal houses, family bloodlines, fighting over the spoils of our sweat equity, as demonstrated in the movie, I don't know, you can say The Matrix for one, which is the most, but Jupiter Ascending. Because I have often considered the underlying themes of both The Matrix and Jupiter Ascending, since both show how we are farmed for energy, controlled by external forces, while living in a fabricated world built specifically to keep those human power cells plugged into the system. The best way to increase your odds of success when making the final run in winning is to anticipate your opponent's next few moves and shut them down before they make the claims. This is actually simple to do once you've got the experience of others, but it does, of course, have no guarantees that it will stop their attempts at blocking you, but it will help definitely reduce the odds of them being able to do it. Now, personally, I think the way to do this shutdown is by including the moves that they're going to make and stating the laws in which they would breach if they made such moves into your notice itself when you present it. How you present that fact that you already know what they may do, and this includes losing the documents by, I don't know, saying something like, "It has been reported by several friends your court has a tendency to lose filed documents and case notes. Obviously, I have concerns about such matters and have created your copy and 3 other sets of case notes, including this notice, which I will be able to produce at a moment's notice." There you go. I also understand some have been given dubious information regarding the serving of summonses. Please let me explain. I was informed that unless I have the defendant's private home address, I cannot serve the summons. I know this may sound hard to believe as a clerk of the court, but as we both know about Practice Direction 61.1, which clearly allows for the documents to be served at the person's place of work in circumstances where private data is not available to members of the public, i.e. residential addresses. And of course, it would be a denial of justice to impose such restrictions, since the public does not have access to the private data in the way corporations do, and creates thus a 2-tier judicial system which would be in contradiction of the fact we are all equal under law. Now, all right, I was getting a bit flowery there, but that's the sort of way I would include the presumed moves before they happen, to shut them down. So play that back a few times or transcribe what I've just said by using the transcription button, and you can find that by pressing the 3 little buttons you can see there in the bottom right hand corner below this video, and just cut, copy and paste at the timestamp you want. Okay, now those are just 2 hurdles. We're talking about, we're rejecting it because you need their home address. Oh, sorry, we've lost your paperwork. So those are 2 hurdles some may have to get over. But I want to add that DD's case may sound familiar, but it doesn't happen in a majority of cases, I can assure you. But when it does, forewarned is forearmed. This episode is simply to cover those points in case you ever do or hear of someone who has experienced this, and now you know how to reduce the odds. But more than this, courts have had the monopoly on the judicial system since its inception. I know it sounds like an oxymoron there, but spills over into other areas. We know that dealing with debts or claims of any description includes, for some, the use of notaries, which are far from what many of my viewers have also experienced as yet. And I mean, the notaries are just another layer of the system's protection for the system. But it's a shame the concept of property overtook the idea of natural needs, leading to the mess we are in now and have been for most of history, as many would have us believe. Because the idea of property itself obviously invokes the idea of profits, of ownership, of all of these things, when in actual fact it's not, or should not, in my opinion, be about property. It should be more about needs. And if you exceed your needs, well, quite frankly, you're being greedy. And while we laud the idea of making a profit in the capitalist system, well, the downside to making a profit for the other half is that in order to make a profit, there has to be a loser. And that's not an equitable situation to live by. Now, I just want to touch on something that I put on one of my inner circle Telegram groups in actual fact, I say inner circle Telegram group, it's actually my masterclass private group for all the students who have attended the masterclass. But I will share the idea of a post I put up yesterday because it concerns obviously the process that we're discussing now, and not just the problems DD has experienced, but some of the problems that you may have already got yourself into. And they've already got bailiffs knocking on their door because obviously they haven't taken the process through, or they didn't buy the book before the process started, or they ignored it. For whatever reasons, the bailiffs are now knocking on your door. What do you do? Well, the first thing you need to do is stop the bailiffs knocking on your door or making those demands. And if you're in the UK, it would be to complete a particular form, and that form is called N for November 245. Don't worry, I will leave a link in the description below. But this will place a temporary hold on the actions of the unlawful warrant of execution given by the bailiffs. Once that is sorted, so you've stopped the bailiffs, you move to file another one, and the other form that you're going to file at more or less the same time is called an N9B. This effectively places a counterclaim at the debt agents, and with an affidavit of truth and the fact that they do not have a validation of claim, well, they should be easy pickings to overturn. And of course, in that counterclaim, you would have stated your amount with full and reasonable accounting when seeking your summary judgment against them and switching and turning the bailiffs on them. Now, of course, there are more details to that, but I will leave a link in the description below for both those forms, the N245 if you're in the UK, and the form N9B for your counterclaim. All right, so now, of course, there are more details, but you have enough information to deal with the following links that I'll put in the descriptions below to those two forms and read the details of how to fill both of them in. Let me say at this point that I know many of us, including myself, have an aversion to dealing with these people, let alone their paperwork, especially official paperwork, and some find the idea of form filling an absolute nightmare. Well, first, I'll be honest with you folks, they are much easier than you think, and our ideas of, complexity are based on the lack of experience and knowledge, but not true complexity. So it's going to seem like a challenging task for some, but I can assure you, once you take a look at the forms, you work your way through one section at a time, you will get there. And I think it's also fair at this stage in this episode, I think it fair to let you know a few things about remedy and court process that is coming up later on this year. In fact, in hopefully the next few weeks. Whether you're after completed status changes, claiming back your property from DVLA, establishing your right to travel freely in your private conveyance, dealing with court processes, and so on. All this information will be available as downloadable remedy packs depending on the subject matter in a few short weeks on a brand new website designed as a one-stop shop for various aspects of remedy. This will also include, at a later date, trusts, how to create your own indemnity bonds, what to do if your promissory note gets rejected, and a whole lot more as we progress through the year. I have got together with some other well-educated folks to design, create, and help with as much as time will allow us to do so, covering as much of the area of remedy as possible. Many people have stated it would be great to have a UK-based repository for remedy which supplies not just the processes for remedy, but unlike any other site or service, you will also be supplied with much more additional material covering how to stand your ground if that specific remedy is challenged. And so, fear not, solutions, some completely unique to our new website. More on that when the website launches. But over the next few months, I will be going over, in parts, the claim process and its pitfalls. I have yet to experience them themselves, but as I do, I will try and explain to you what we need to do as a sort of counteraction. But as I've stated on many occasions, it's not enough that we learn to defend ourselves. We should be prepared to confront the opposition. If you're waiting for the opposition to make their next move, you're placing yourself in a position that you've no need to be in, because you're going to be in the defense mode, and we really need to be in the attack mode 24/7. Well, I hope you have gleaned a few more snippets which will help you in your journey. Play this video again to just make sure you can take some notes on the forms or what DD has gone through. And again, thank you, DD, for allowing me to do this particular episode. And may I just say again, for those wishing to join one of my debt masterclasses, that the dates will be in the description below that I've got at this moment in time. And the other thing that's now I've considered and will be doing later, for those not being able to join a masterclass because of work or family commitments, I suggest waiting a little while longer, because I'm putting together the complete masterclass pack, which has the full session video with the 55-page manual and slides of debt letter examples and so on, so you will be able to download and learn at your own convenience, irrespective of the time zone that you're in. That should be available, I hope, by mid-July onwards. So I wish you well on your journey of self-discovery and uncovering the potential you were born with to deal with these parasites in every walk of life. And as always, question everything, believe nothing, and stay curious. And I'll see you on deck very soon.